John, I named the most powerful people in sports media for 2023.
And Andrew, this is your top mover and shaker?
Howdy! How do you do?
And we're back. The Marchand and Ourand Sports Media Podcast. I'm Andrew Marchand, sports media columnist for the New York Post. He's John Ourand, the media reporter for the Sports Business Journal. John, anything new?
Nah, nothing's new, man. Let's just get right to who's up, who's down, Andrew.
All right, well, let's just tell them the topics first. Most powerful of 2023, Diamond Sports and Amazon, NBA TV talks, big promotion at ESPN, and we will talk about John Ourand as the last topic. But okay, who's up, who's down?
Who's up? Who's down?
Andrew, I love having the lady back. I love having her back introducing. Why don't you lead us off?
The Marchand and Ourand Sports Media Podcast, a lot of comings and goings. All right, who's up? Stephen A. Smith. We mentioned at the top for the newsletter I write every Monday at New York Post Sports Plus. I did my 25 most powerful people for 2023 in sports media. And number one is Stephen A. Smith. Look, you go a lot of directions when you do these lists, but the reason I go with Stephen A. is because he has just reached another level. You talk about the opinion people during the week, they kind of are the center of attention of the sports world, not only because they're ubiquitous, especially Stephen A., who's on basically, it feels like every show and has his own YouTube show and own podcast. I mean, I think the guy's talking to a mic 24 hours a day. You hear from those people all the time. But I think what really has kind of moved Stephen A. into another level is where he stands with athletes, with people like when you saw the crossover between Turner and ESPN a couple of weeks ago during the in-season tournament finals between Shaq and Barkley and Stephen A. and where he is, that puts him at the top for me for 2023. And when we talk about the list in a little bit, remember, it's just for 2023. And when you do these lists, it's always, you can always go commissioners or the presidents and chairmen of the networks and the digital players. But for 2023, my who's up, Stephen A. Smith, the coveted sports clicker, most powerful person in sports media for 2023.
That's a topic that is coming up. My who's up, David Preschlack, the head of the bankrupt Diamond Sports Group. And Andrew, this might be a first in the 26-month history of the pod. Chris Ripley was a who's up after I interviewed him in person, of course, at Sinclair's Hunt Valley office. I don't think we've ever honored someone from a bankrupt company as a who's up. Master of the board, Chris Mason, we need to get our stats department to take a look at this. But I do want to give a nod to Preschlack, who is close to completing what I think is one of the great business Hail Marys of all time. The Wall Street Journal reported that Preschlack and Diamond were deep in negotiations to have Amazon invest in Diamond, in the company. People had written off Diamond for the better part of the year. I had written off Diamond for the better part of the year. This changes my view of Diamond's future dramatically. If Diamond can pull this off, and it's still a big if, odds are likely that it will be able to emerge from bankruptcy and operate as an RSN company again. When the Wall Street Journal publishes a story like this, it usually means that negotiations are nearing an end. And you and I, we've dealt with Amazon often enough to know that that last hurdle sometimes is the most difficult to climb. The biggest surprise to me over the past couple of years is that Amazon has really proved to be one of the most disciplined companies when it comes to these types of negotiations. And despite dozens of phone calls that I've had over the past couple of days, I don't have a really good read on whether this deal is likely or not. The Journal story is accurate. They are in deep discussions, but nobody quite knows how it ends. And if it ends well, this will be one of the greatest business moves that Preschlack has pulled off.
All right, well, that's going to be topic 2. We will get to more into that in a moment. My who's down is NFL Network play-by-players. The NFL Network, since it started doing games, has had trouble figuring out their top play-by-players, dating back to a story I had years and years ago, which I liked it. It was Brian Gumbel. Was their play-by-player to begin things. Did not have the experience, and he admitted he wasn't that great at it. Then they've gone through a lot of people through the years, and they don't have the standalone Thursday games, but they do have standalone games, and that makes their announcers more of a focus because they use studio guys. On last Saturday, Chris Rose did the first game. He was okay. I'm a Rose guy. I think he's a very good studio host. He was okay, but not great. Then Rich Eisen, I've said it before, he just he's not a play-by-player. It's distracting when you're watching. So NFL Network, they have to figure that out. They've had trouble for years and years now getting it right in terms of the crews that they use on their games, because it shouldn't be a story. They shouldn't be trending on X, and that's an issue. So I just think they need to either hire somebody full-time who's a play-by-player or just figure out another method, because, so far it has not worked out well.
Can I ask you a quick question about that, Andrew? Like, what is it that they don't get right? Is it they don't match the energy? Is it they mess up the calls? Is it they don't set up their partners? What exactly are you seeing there?
Yeah, all of the above. Yeah, I think the biggest thing is when you don't have the reps that that they lack, when you don't do play-by-play. Like Eisen hasn't done that much play-by-play. So then you're on a standalone game. So people are, there's no other games going on at the same time. So people get more focused on it. And it feels as if, like, when you listen to Eisen, he's calling a game the way he thinks you're supposed to call a game instead of being instinctive, which comes from reps and reps. And he also makes it about himself a lot, which is, not great as well. So you add in all those things and it hurts the broadcast. And it's, people always talk about what are the value of broadcasters. You could argue that they don't affect ratings. They don't do this. They don't do that. They make events feel bigger. And over time, that's helpful. And the first rule of broadcasting is not to be annoying and not to get in the way, which might not sound like a nice thing to say. But if you do the opposite and you do get in the way, and it is confusing on calls, like there's been a few Eisen games where it's like, wait, did the referees, not get it right? And generally speaking, that's the play-by-play guy not being able to really recognize quickly, which again comes from reps. And so, that's the issue with all these guys when you're doing it. This is at the highest level. These are NFL games. This isn't a high school game. So to answer your question, it kind of is all the things you mentioned, but the biggest thing I think is just not having that feel for play-by-play and what you should be saying and what you should be identifying. And some people say, "Oh, I like it different." Okay, maybe, but it doesn't work.
All right, I'm going to go my who's down. I picked Rick Cordella of the NBC Sports Group because, according to the Arizona Republic, Andrew, Cordella's decision to put the college basketball game last weekend between top-ranked Arizona and number 4 Purdue exclusively on Peacock, and this is it was a quote from the headline, Andrew. It, quote unquote, outraged fans. The paper's columnist, Jeremy Clough, wrote, "Surely it's a game worthy of a national television audience on a major network, right?" It was a good game, too. Purdue pulled off the upset. We'll never know how many people watch, but Peacock doesn't give the viewer figures. But I picked Cordella as down because these are the types of stories in this first year of the Big Ten deal that NBC has, where complaints about sports being relegated to streaming and how do I get Peacock? He's going to have to deal with this all season. 3 things. 1, Amazon has proved through the NFL and Thursday Night Football that it can amass a big audience. So the idea that a college basketball game is too big for streaming is something that I've grown not to accept. Number 2 is college basketball fans, welcome to the club. Every year, it seems, there's a new fan base that has to deal with their sport going to streaming. I think it was 2 years or 3 years ago, it was soccer fans who were furious about having to buy all these different streaming services to watch their sport. You don't hear the complaints from soccer fans that much anymore, at least not in terms of that. Then it was tennis, hockey, baseball. Now it's a Big Ten and Peacock. And the third point I kind of want to make is I actually agree with Jeremy Clough. I hate trying to find games on a streaming service. I hate it. My Terps are having a rough basketball season this season. About a week or two ago, I went over to a friend's house to watch their game against Ryder. Should be a big win. It wasn't on the Big Ten Network. It was on BTN Plus. And Andrew, try to picture this: two guys over 50 trying to figure out how to download the BTN Plus app to his TV. It was terrible. We never saw the game. Didn't see 1 second of the game because we couldn't figure out the streaming. So I hate it. Jeremy Clough hates it, but we have to deal with it. It's not going away.
So you're against trying to get people to pay for a new subscription service that that they're trying to start up. Is that what you're saying?
Look, I want all the games on a channel that I can just turn on the TV and get.
Got it. All right.
That's all. I'm a very simple person.
Don't you think though there's a business opportunity here? That's what they're doing, and in a couple of years,
of course, there's a business opportunity, but a lot of times business opportunities are about reaching fans and doing fans. Like I understand why Peacock is doing it. Of course, it makes business sense for Peacock to do it. It's going to grow the number of subscribers at Peacock.
So you're into subscription services growing the number of subscribers. Just want that on the record.
I wouldn't say I'm into it. I'm
Okay.
Again, I'm into turning on the
you
TV.
might be into it. We'll get to that. We'll get to that at the end. Rick Cordella, by the way, was.
I'm a man of contradiction. Let's get to topic one, though.
Well, Rick Cordella, by the way, we can't get to topic one. He was 16th on my list of most powerful for 2023.
All right. So Andrew Marchand and the New York Post doing a most influential is so radically different from what I would have done at the Sports Business Journal. Number one is Stephen A. Smith. I understand why you put him on there. He probably would have made my list, but I find it hard to believe that Stephen A. Smith is more powerful than, say, Jimmy Pitaro or even
here's the thing. Okay, well, first off, all right, let's just I know everyone listening gets Post Plus, so they probably read it. So but so I'll reiterate though, what it says. It's a 25 most powerful for 2023. The list is just based on my opinion. And if you do a list, it would be the same list every year, the way you're saying it, right? It's always going to be Roger Goodell, Jimmy Pitaro. So mine's based on what happens in 2023. So yes, you have the historical legacy of what people do, but it also is specific to 2023. And Stephen A., although there wasn't anything that much different, except he really got more into his YouTube show, he just was a cut above. And I don't think when you look at these rankings, which a lot of people have texted me and said these are the best rankings they've ever seen.
Names. I want one name.
Well, because here's the thing. The one thing I said, I say at the beginning, I say at the end of these things, if you call me and complain, it's on the record. So my last final note is I'm serious. You can complain, folks, but it's on the record. I'm printing in my next newsletter. If you want to text, call, or email saying you nailed it, feel free. And a couple people did take me up on that. And they did. They said you nailed it. They may have gotten good ratings, but they did. They said you nailed it, which I think was sincere. I felt they were sincere.
Okay, I'm not going to take issue with Stephen A. because I think that was a pick that I can understand. Your number two pick. Oh my God, you love soccer. You love soccer and you love Messi. How many subscribers did he bring to Apple TV Plus?
Yeah, Apple doesn't say. But
yeah, of course not. So we don't know.
Also, listen, this isn't. A lot of people they go into small groups after they read the rankings and they say, like, what do you mean by that? You know what I mean? So there's a lot of like people who so this one is one of those where the small groups get together and try to dissect it a little bit. He's representing all these huge athletes like LeBron, the Mannings, Brady. And so that's what's going on there. But Messi, it's a unique deal. Like, regardless, he is getting a cut of the subscriber fees from Apple. I mean, that is probably can't be matched, at least not in the near term, by major athletes, just because how other leagues are set up. That's just a unique situation. And that's power that Messi was able to do that, come to the United States. And we could talk about MLS, but it is a major league. It is our top soccer league, and it is a top 10 league, maybe top 6 league in the world. And so when you look at it, for him to get a cut of the fees, that's powerful.
I'm not doubting it's powerful. We don't know how much the cut is. He played, how many games did he play? Was it 50%? Was it less than 50%?
I mean, he joined late, so it was way less than 50% of the whole season.
But then he also got injured midway through. It's like it just Messi at number 2 raised my eyebrow.
Okay. Did I get any right?
Yes, you did. I thought your number 3 pick was exactly who my number one pick would be, and I wouldn't have done it for number for 2023, but for Sean McManus, a former big get on this podcast, has been around since the late 1990s and has been a huge mover and shaker in the business. And just by mere fact that he's sort of the most senior sports media executive at a network, I thought that was a good pick. He would have been my number one this year for certain.
Yeah, that's why he got the top executive. Yeah, he's quickly followed by Jimmy Pitaro and Eric Shanks as, my top TV executives. Jay Marine also in the top 10 in terms of TV executives. Yeah, I thought McManus career-wise, I mean, he had one of the big, we talked about it when we had him on, but 98, bringing the AFC back to CBS, and then a steady hand throughout his run. So he deserved that third spot to me in the year that he announced that he's going to retire.
One more nit to pick on your list. I don't think that you give enough love to in 2023 to Luis Silberwasser, who is the head of sports over at Warner Brothers Discovery Sports.
Well, let's just say where he was. He was number 22.
He was number 22, but he was also behind McManus and Burson. I believe
Burson. So David Burson. So not everyone.
Thank you very much. We're getting deep into the weeds.
Yeah,
here.
Exactly. This is why you're no longer on the pod.
Oh, too soon, man. Too soon.
David Burson, who got promoted to be the successor to Sean McManus, didn't get the chairman title, but will be the top dog at CBS. So 2023. Burson gets that promotion. That's why Silberwasser already has been in the job for a while.
He also was behind Jimmy Pitaro and Burke Magnus. So he had two people from ESPN in there.
Again, nothing against Silberwasser. They just didn't do as many big deals this year.
Here's how I view Silberwasser this year. He is somebody who Warner Brothers Discovery has been through belt tightening, and they've been cutting costs, and they've had to do layoffs down at the old Turner Sports down in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
He has come through that now, and they did do a significant deal for NASCAR, where they got a piece of the NASCAR deal. They've done significant deals with streaming, where they launched a premium sports service off their Max tier. They are deeply involved with these NBA negotiations, which of course they would be. They're an NBA partner. But a year ago, we were wondering if Turner was even going to be at the state that they are right now. So I think Luis very quietly has had a pretty effective year, and I would have had him certainly in my maybe top 5. I certainly would have had him in my top 10.
So do you give ESPN credit for their layoffs? Because you're giving credit to Turner for their layoffs. ESPN also had layoffs.
When were the Turner layoffs? I think the Turner layoffs were not part of 2023.
You just brought them up. You brought up.
No. They went through that period.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So for 2023, I would have punished Pitaro for the ESPN layoffs, but next year he doesn't get punished for them because it's a new
and he
year.
gets credit for them. All right.
Depending on how good they
listen. They're my opinion. So it's like. And look, I take it very seriously because I know everyone takes them, people take these things seriously, whatever list it's on. By the way, we won an award, the Awful Announcing Best Sports Media Podcast.
But shout out to Ben Koo, who has always been a supporter of this podcast, and that was very nice. We were actually against legit competition there. Dan
Lebitard. Who else was in there? I think Jimmy Traina.
Was Pablo Torres? Yeah.
That was nice. That was very nice. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben, very much. That was.
Someone asked me, if you win an Alfie, do you put like that on your mantle?
All right. Two more quick bashes for you.
We didn't understand the Alfie. Do you put an Alfie on your mantle or not? If you get an actual, is there a trophy? Do we get something?
Oh, by the way, if I got an Alfie, it would go on my mantle. Absolutely.
If we only get one, though, I just for the record, we'll get to it at the end. But if we only get one, you definitely do not get it. Maybe AC or Chris deserve to have it.
Okay, Apple did a deal for MLS and nothing else, and you have Eddie Q just outside the top 10. Eddie hasn't done enough in sports to be up that high, Andrew.
Yeah, I would say powerful people in the business. Eddie Q definitely deserves to be in that.
I agree with
15. And so, You're right, but Power also is not necessarily doing deals. It's also not doing deals. I mean, they were in on Sunday Ticket, didn't do that, which they chose not to do basically. And yeah, that's a fair like critique of where they've kind of been absent. And we'll talk about the NBA. I'm not so sure, at the moment how involved they are with the NBA. And so yeah, it's fair. I mean, these are all, look, here's the thing about this, all subjective. I mean, these are subjective lists.
All right, and
Yeah, go
my
ahead.
last thing though, on the subjective, former big get, Brett Yarmark is possibly number one for me, maybe number two. Here's a guy who came in, the Big 12 was dead. He came in, he not only gave new life to the Big 12, he is primarily responsible for killing a Power 5 conference in the Pac-12 just because he got in, he was active, he did the media deal, and there was no media deal left for the Pac-12. You had Brett Yormark at 12. That's a pretty high ranking there. I would have had him easily in my top 5, I think, after that.
And so this is why this newsletter that I do, right? It's for Monday, it's information, but it's also so like people study it years and years from now and they'll read it in schools, right? And they'll say, okay, so why did I put Yarmark at 12? So do you know why I put him at 12?
Tell me.
Because it's called the Big 12. So that's why it's 12.
Good,
So there's deeper meaning there.
Good.
You know what? If he was at the Big 1, if I did Kliakov, he would have been 2. At the Pac-2. So it would have been, so it's the Big 12. So he got 12.
This isn't a nit to pick. It's just that I noticed this, and it's a question that I have. Stephen A. Smith is number 1. You have a lot of other talent in there, like Colin Coward and others. No Pat McAfee. 1 year ago, I would have bet you Pat McAfee would be. I haven't checked this, but I'm going to bet he was in your top 5 a year ago.
Yeah, he wasn't. I don't think top 5. I'd have to look back. But he wasn't it last year. There is a thing where I don't necessarily. I try to make it different from year to year. He did make some moves this year. He, left obviously the FanDuel contract. He went to ESPN. Game day, he is definitely a center of attention. He's worthy of possibly being in my top 25. But like I said, in that category, I got Stephen A. at 1. I mentioned Shannon Sharp, who I could be a year early on Shannon Sharp. I also have Chris Russo. They're deeper down at 22 for Russo, 24 for Shannon Sharp. So yeah, I know.
Good friend, Chris Russo.
You're a good friend.
Our good buddy there, John Ourand.
So yeah, McAfee maybe could have been in there, but he didn't make the cut.
Yeah, I love the list. So that's why you make these lists, because it's fun fodder for discussion.
They're talkers. All right. Amazon, big discussion topic on this podcast. Diamond Sports. Wall Street Journal had a story this week. I have reported about the Yankees who have a deal. They have 21 Yankee games on per year. This past season was on the Wednesday nights predominantly. I had reported, I believe, years ago that they wanted to do something similar with the biggest teams like the Cubs, the Dodgers, if they could. And that's hard to do to get a piece of it. What do you make of, now these aren't those type of teams. These are the second tier type teams. But what do you make of Amazon moving into this relationship and what it can mean long term?
All right, as I said in the Who's Up, there's a big if this deal goes through. So that they have been negotiating. They're deep into negotiations. So it's hard to say whether it's likely or not, but for the purpose of this discussion, let's say that the deal goes through. If the deal goes through, this potentially creates the solution that to the regional sports network problem that has bedeviled the NBA, NHL, and Major League Baseball. Amazon would invest into Diamond Sports. So Diamond Sports would still run the RSNs, and it would use Prime Video as its streaming outlet. And so if that happens, all of a sudden, they're going to have around 20 RSNs worth of teams streaming off of their Prime Video outlet. And if that happens, you better believe they're going to march straight into NBC, try to get those streaming rights for it as well. They're going to go to all of the different independents. They already have the relationship with the S Network. I'm told Randy Levine has been part of these negotiations as well. They're going to go down to the Dodgers, and what we're talking about, getting that one national local streaming service. That's something that Amazon can provide, and if it works, it not only would be beneficial to Diamond and help Diamond come out of bankruptcy, this really is a potential solution for what's been a terrible crisis for all these leagues.
It could be for sure. You know, you mentioned Randy Levine. He's the president of the Yankees, also the chairman of Yes. So it's pretty important to probably long term if you have the Yankees on board and liking the plan. I know that there's a feeling that that they could maybe do it better than MLB could. And so this does give Amazon you know if it were to go through and another wedge into sports. I mean, we've talked about this on the pod since we started, how important Amazon has been. They're definitely moving to be the biggest digital sports player. Obviously with the ESPN Pluses and the Peacocks and the Paramount Pluses, the incumbents who have moved into streaming. But in terms of the newcomers, I mean, they are far and away, the favorites for the NBA. And so they're far and away the most important there.
Yeah, and also there's something going on here that I'm not sure if it's enough to call it a trend yet, but last season, Diamond left the Padres, and the Padres rights reverted to MLB. Same thing with the Diamondbacks; those rights reverted to MLB. Well, the Pirates, their Warner Bros. Discovery just kind of closed up shop. They didn't go back to MLB. They did a deal with the Fenway Sports Group. So essentially, the owner of the Red Sox are controlling the Pirates rights in Pittsburgh. The Twins right now, they don't have a deal. They're not marching to MLB to try to get a deal. They're still holding out hope to get some sort of deal with Diamond. I don't know if it's holding out hope, but they're negotiating with Diamond to try to get a deal there. The Rockies, another one. I had thought, if you had asked me about 6 months ago, I had thought that when all these rights deals were up, all these teams were going to march straight to MLB and let MLB hold them. There's something going on here, and I just haven't been able to connect those dots yet.
It's going to be interesting. All right, NBA talks. We've talked about them the last couple of weeks. Couple of things. Number one, Apple. I'm not saying they're out, okay, because it's a long way to go. But I keep hearing people tell me they don't think Apple is as strong as maybe people have suspected. And again, not saying they're out. They have one of the most powerful people, as we mentioned. Eddie Q is running Apple. So big NBA
I have
fan.
Eddie Q as the number 11 most powerful person in sports media this year.
Yeah, you're right. That would be a good call, John. So Apple, that's interesting. I think the NBA and the incumbents are way far apart, which is kind of understandable because if they were to make it so the NBA doesn't go to market, they're going to want to get overpaid. So they should come down. But I just heard that what they want and what Warner Brothers Discovery and Disney want to pay is just way far apart right now, which is understandable. I do think they're going to probably, if they want to get to the money that they want, they're going to add a digital player. Amazon's probably the favorite at the moment, but then a fourth network or platform. Again, NBC, they're going to be, I think, disciplined, but I think that's the one that in terms of, adding the broadcast component is something that nobody else can really bring besides ABC, ESPN, who is expected to at least hold on to the finals every other year, if not every year. But NBC has that. And then CBS and Fox have already said publicly they're out.
And the only thing I'm going to add to that, because I agree with everything that you said, is don't sleep on Google YouTube. The Sunday Ticket experience has been very positive for Google YouTube. They are taking a look at other sports rights that can fit with them. And the NBA is the biggest one that is coming up. I'm not suggesting that they're going to get it, but I think they're going to be more active than I'd given them credit for previously.
Okay, let's move to our second to last topic before we get to the topic about John Ourand. A promotion at ESPN. Chris LaPlaca retiring after 43 years as the head of ESPN's communications, had a going away party last week. And this week they named Josh Krulewitz, who's been there for, I think, 3 decades, as his successor. Krulewitz, look, this is what they got right, Jimmy Pitaro and company. I think it's important that if you're ESPN, that you have the DNA of your company, that it remains. Yes, you want to think forward, which, I think Krulewitz can do. But I also think it's important that you have people who believe the company, because you just have too many mercenaries that are it comes in, there's no emotion to it. And I just know, this happened a little before we start taping. Just the reaction from some people I've heard from has been overwhelmingly positive. And if morale is important, then this is a good hire, a good promotion by ESPN. I think they did an exhaustive search, and they talked to a lot of really high qualified people, but they stay in-house and they promote Krulewitz.
Yeah, and I think it's more than just the fact Josh has been around for a long time. So let's give it to Josh. I think that he's proved himself. When there have been fires at ESPN that are blowing up, he's there to work on those. He has great relationships with the media. I think we're both. I'm going to speak for you again, because
You're always speaking for me.
Pod.
No, I don't
All
like
right, I'm
him.
not speaking for you.
I don't like Josh.
I'm a big fan of his. I think he's great. I don't know if you are or not, Andrew, but so Josh, you want to give out good stories? Come to me. I'm happy to do that.
I told him congratulations.
Andrew's not a big fan.
I told him congratulations. Now I plan on torturing you. That's what I told him.
Oh, that's so funny. I told him when I heard, I said, I want to say congratulations, but I also want to say condolences. This is a hard job, man.
Yeah, it's a hard job, but deserved and good for him. All right, let's go to our final topic. John Ourand, big announcement this week. After 18 years of Sports Business Journal, leaving to go to the subscription service Puck, which covers media, entertainment, and politics. And now they're going to add John to cover sports business. John, first off, congratulations. Everyone is happy for you. And number two, get lost.
Means get lost, Squidward.
Andrew, I'm going to try to be as sincere as I can here, and I'm going to hope that I don't get emotional on this. In fact, I wrote something down. I asked Shannon Sharp to read my notes for me. Shannon, can you take this over, please?
You fought for me, bro.
Did I?
I'm here because of you. You've allowed me to share the stage with you. You've allowed me to share the platform. I'm going to cry in the car, but I'm not going to cry now. The opportunity that you gave me to become what I became, I'm forever indebted to you. I'll never forget what you did for me. You've helped me grow more than you ever know. All I ask is when you lay your head on that pillow at night, I gave you everything I had. I gave you everything I had.
There, that's exactly what I was looking for, Andrew. So, thank you, Shannon. That's exactly my feelings exactly. Like you made me, man. You made me.
In all seriousness, a lot of questions about the pod, what's going to happen to it. We've been doing the pod for more than 2 years. Every week, when we started doing it, one of the first things when Chris Shaw, the executive sports editor of the Post, he asked me about the idea of doing a podcast with John. The first thing for me was, I knew I was going to be talking to this person, all the time during the week. And so would I want to do that? And John's, he's a great teammate, great guy. So that was a plus for me. And, the reaction from people when this came out was both publicly and then a lot of text and people DMing, asking about what's the future of the podcast. To be determined. So on our side of things, it's a relationship between the Post and the Sports Business Journal. And, for my bosses, they didn't know about it till, it was your news. So they didn't know about it till it happened. So everything is kind of TBD, and we're going to figure everything out with the plan to continue in this space in the time being, and then we'll go from there.
It's funny because I think back when Abe Madpour, my boss, came to me and asked if I wanted to do the pod with you, and I said yes right away. And there were total nerves because, you write for the New York Post. I view the New York Post as throwing bombs all the time. I was like, boy, I don't know. And in fact, that was some of our jokes early on. You're like, you're going to ruin every source I ever had, which is
that's what I said to you. That was
that's what you said to me exactly. Yeah. Which is not true in the least. This pod has been fantastic. It has been. I could legitimately say this has been the most fun that I have had on a beat in my entire career. I've really enjoyed doing the pod, and I hope there's something down the road with it. But I do want to just make a quick mention of I've started at SBJ in 2006. My first editor was Abe Madcore, and we talked multiple times a day. He we talked about stories, we talked about story ideas, we talked about how to craft stories, and he was my line editor for about the first 6 or 7 years through this. And then I went to David Bourne, another editor who I just love. And it's when you have been at a place for 18 years like I have, it is incredibly difficult to leave. You have deep relationships, you have lifelong friends, too many to name. I don't want to start naming some, like Terry Lefton and Michael Smith and others.
Now you name them. This is classic Ourand on the pod. It's like, I don't want to name people, then you name people. Now you left out about 5 people. Great job.
Trip Mickle used to be there, John Lombard, a ton of people. And
really, Trip Mickle's book, or no, we're not going to do that.
Oh, by the way, I think it's on the discount shelves now. Okay. The book.
Go ahead.
But it's incredibly difficult to leave. It really is. And so I have been a fan of Pucks for the 2 years that they've been around. Matt Bellany writes a newsletter that I just think is I don't care about Hollywood movies, and I read it every week. I really am excited to get there and work with those people. But leaving SBJ is hard, and I have a billion conflicting emotions sort of going through this whole thing. I love SBJ. I bleed SBJ, and I'm will always be a fan.
All right. Well, we're happy for you. But good news. There's one more Marchand and Ourand sports media pod for this year.
All right, we'll get one more.
I mean, I sent John, I didn't publicly do this, but I did send John a picture of the pod emblem, and I scratched out his name and his picture. So maybe,
can we talk about this? I okayed that. I thought it was funny. It was your wife.
I know. People might miss
common sense. Mrs. Clicker helping us out.
Yeah, she said, nah, people might misconstrue it. But we do plan on going forward, and we'll see how everything works out. But thank you everyone for listening. And also very important, AC Wyatt, Chris Mason, they're in the trenches every week with us, putting everything together and dealing with us. John's consistently late to the podcast.
Can I tell you, all of the messages I got at least 5 that said, "How did the master of the board take it?" I'm in a glass case of emotion.
That's nice. So, well, we'll find out. We're all happy for you. So anyways, we'll see you next week. And I guess it doesn't matter if they. No, yeah, it does for me because we're gonna keep going.
Yeah, keep on. By the way, that's why I'm leaving. Nobody's been writing, ranking, or reviewing, and forever. Come on, guys.
Yeah, Eddie Q's probably taking care of that, using his power. Not so always so positive. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for listening.
We wouldn't expect anything less for you to not be able to jump on the Zoom correctly. So we appreciate it.
Well, that is true.
I believe you just got some AC Wyatt shade there.
Yeah, exactly. Is John's head cut off, or is it just on mine?
No, my head's cut off.
Maybe we might cut you off completely.
Too soon, guys. Too soon. Oh no, Chris Mason's going to make me look bad.
After I say how are you, we'll do who's up, who's down. So why don't you say, let's get to it. Who's up, who's down? So I came in, introed, asked you how you're doing, went down the topics, then you say who's up, who's down.
Okay.
We have this podcast down.
How long have we been doing this? When you were like, anything new? And I was like, nah, nothing's new. Let's just get to who's up, who's down. And that's when you were like, well, we are going to talk about this later.
Listen, you have no say on this podcast anymore.
John, I was just wondering, so you had 18 years here at SBJ. So your career at SBJ was old enough to vote, and you elected to leave. So that's awesome.
I like that. Although to be fair, it's 17 and 8 months. So
we're going to say 18. So
we're going to say 18.